Okay, so Parsha Illuminated, Parsha's Toldos. So Toldos contains much of the life of Isaac, of Yitzchak, and and contains the episodes that inform us of the relationship that Yitzchak had with his two twin sons, Yaakov and Esav, and that's what we're going to focus on today is Yaakov and Esav's relationship and how they relate, and especially Esav, how they relate to Yitzchak. But it's going to be pretty focused, as you'll see. There's so much you can discuss, but we'll really be working within kind of one general topic. So let's go to their conception or their Rivka, their mother's pregnancy, right at the beginning of the Parsha. And the Torah tells us, and it's on your source sheet in chapter 25, verse 22, Vayisrotzitzu abanim b'kirba. The children, these twins, she may not have known she had twins at that point, but there were the banim, the sons inside of her were struggling. Vatomer, and she said, Im Kain, if this is so, lamazeh anochi, why, here they translate it, why am I like this? Why is this happening? Vatelech lidrosh es Hashem, she went to inquire of the Lord, she went to a prophet to find out what was going on. Vayomer Hashem la, and Hashem said to her through the prophet, Shnei goyim b'vinech, there are two nations in your womb, Ushnei le'umim mimeyayich yiparedu, and two kingdoms will separate from your innards. Ula'om mila'om yamat v'rav ya'avod tzayir. One kingdom will become mightier than the other one, and the elder will serve the younger. Okay, we're just using the translation. We're not focusing necessarily on every word here. But let's read the comment of Rashi. So the prophet tells her that there are two nations in your womb. That's why there's a struggle going on. You actually are having twins, which you may not have been aware, and there's the beginning of an eternal struggle taking place in your very womb. Now Rashi has a very interesting comment. Rashi says that the word goyim, which means the nations, there are two nations in your womb, is spelled in the Torah with, instead of how it should really be spelled gimel vav yud mem, which is spelled goyim, it's spelled geyim with two yuds instead. Still pronounced goyim, but it's spelled geyim. So why is that? So Rashi brings a midrash. The midrash says, or Gemara, the Talmud says, the word, it's written geyim, pronounced geyim. It's referring to geyim. Geyim means like from the word gava, like arrogant, but it also could just mean like not necessarily arrogant, but exalted. So it's saying there's two exalted people in your womb. Who is it referring to? Antoninos and Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, the great leader of the Jewish people, the one who compiled the Mishnah, and he lived in the I guess like the 3rd century or so, and he had a good relationship with the Roman governor, and who was named Antoninus, and they were both on their own very wealthy. And Rashi says it's referring to the two exalted people in your womb are Antoninos and Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, each descendants of Yaakov and Esav. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi being a descendant of Yaakov, Antoninos the Roman being a descendant of Esav. And it says, from whose tables neither radishes nor lettuce were lacking, either in the summer or in the winter. They were both very, very wealthy. Okay. Very strange Rashi. Like, what on earth is going on here? Why is she goes to the prophet and she says, what's going on? And he tells her, there's two nations in your womb, and it's the beginning of the eternal struggle. And also, there's a hint that there are two exalted ones in your womb. That from these two nations will come two exalted people, Reb Yehuda Nasing Antoninus. It seems to just be completely unrelated. So what is this about? So let's keep that in mind. Okay, continuing on, verse 24. So her days to give birth were complete, and behold, there were in fact twins in her womb. The first one emerged ruddy, reddish. He was like a coat of hair. He's very hairy, and they called him Esav. Fine, number one. Then afterwards, his brother came out, and his hand was grasping Esav's heel. Yaakov, and he named him Yaakov, Jacob, and Yitzchak was 60 years old at the time. So here it says that Esav was born first, and afterwards came out Yaakov, and his hand was holding on to the heel of Esav. The word acharechein implies like some kind of delay almost, and his hand's holding on to the heel. So what's the significance of that? Why is he holding on to the heel? Maybe trying to get out first. That's what you would assume, but what's going on with that? Okay, then we have continuing Vayigdalu Hanearim, verse 27, and the youths grew up, and Esav ish yodei tzayid ish sadeh. And Esav was a man who understood hunting, a man of the field. The Yaakov ish tam yoshev halim, and Yaakov was a tam. He was an innocent man. He was simple, and he dwelled in tents. Understood to mean he learned Torah. Okay, Esav was a man who understood hunting. He was Yodei Tzayid. Rashi comments, he knew how to trap and to deceive his father. He would deceive his father. He would ask him, Father, how do we tithe salt and straw? So a person is supposed to tithe their produce, some by Torah law, some rabbinic law. There's no, it's only produce. It does not apply to salt. But Esav was very, very very careful about his observance. At least he wanted to make it look that way. And so he would ask his father, how do you separate maaser? How do you tithe your salt and your straw, which also does not require tithing. It's not eaten by people. And then Rashi continues. He says, his father, Savar Aviv Shemedaktek b'mitzvos. His father thought, or at least he wanted his father to think, that he was very careful about mitzvah observance. Okay, now, why these things? Why is he asking, how do you tithe salt? Let him ask, how do you tithe the wheat? Something that you actually need to tithe. Why is he asking about things that do not actually need to be tithed? And one more verse, Vayahav Yitzchak es Esav ki tzayid b'fiv. Isaac loved Esav because tzayid, his hunting, his game, was in his mouth. Rivka heves es Yaakov, and Rivka loved Yaakov. So it says Yitzchak loved Esav because his game was in his mouth. Whose game was in whose mouth? The simple reading is that Yitzchak loved Esav because Esav provided him food. The game that Esav hunted was in the mouth of Yaakov. Rashi, though, quotes a second idea. First of all, he says it's just kitarguma, like the translation of the Aramaic translation, unkos, which means it was in Isaac's mouth. But the Midrash says, Bifiv, in his mouth, is in the mouth of Esav. There was shehayatzado sa umerameo bidvarav. He would entrap him and deceive him with his words. That when it says that there was trapping in his mouth, it means there was trapping in Esav's mouth. Esav was deceptive and would trick his father into thinking he was someone who he was not. So, and did Yitzchak fall for it? Yitzchak was, one of the greatest of the greatest. Definitely no dummy. So, was Esav just that good at tricking him? What's going on with that? So a number of questions to get us started. Just to quickly review, what is this idea that we're referencing the that in her womb were these two descendants of Yaakov and Esav, Rebbe and Antoninus, Rebbe Yehuda Hanasi and Antoninos. Why is that being mentioned here? When Yaakov comes out, he's holding onto the heel of Esav. What does that represent? Why is Esav asking about tithing salt and things that don't need to be tithed? Like I'm asking, even if he wants to make it look like he's careful about the mitzvahs, about tithing, let him ask about things that actually need to be tithed, unless he just has no idea. And finally, how is it that Yitzchak seems to be falling for Esav's tricks, Esav's deception? So these are things to consider. So the Chassam Sofer offers the following approach to this topic. Yeah, Menachem, you want to ask something or say something?
Yes, I'm wondering if this ability of Esav to deceive Yaakov is a precursor to did I say Yaakov? I meant Yitzchak. A precursor to Yaakov's deception at the end, where he puts on the fur and everything else. Does it show that he might be susceptible to being deceived?
Okay, it's possible. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of deception that goes on in this parsha and next parsha. Something to keep our eye on. Yep. Okay, so the Chassam Sofer raises some of these questions. He raises this question. He says it can't be that she went to this prophet and he started to tell her about Antoninos and Rebbe Yehuda Hanasi generations later. Like, it just doesn't make sense that happened now. That's just not related. So he says that you have to understand what the sages are trying to inform us about with this midrash. So we have a concept in our tradition, sometimes referred to as Yissachar and Zevulun. Yissachar and Zevulun are two of the sons of Yaakov, two tribes, and based on a number of verses, it's understood that they had a special relationship. Yissachar would study Torah, Zevulun would engage in commerce, and Zevulun would support Yissachar in their Torah, would offer them financial support, and they would both get rewarded for it equally. The ones who studied the Torah, the ones who elevated themselves spiritually, and the ones who supported them. Now, when it comes to Yissachar and Zevulun, it's like a very specific, deal of how it works exactly. But just the general concept is you have people who are dedicated wholly, fully to spiritual matters, but they can't live on their own. They need other people to enable them, to support them. And that's the relationship of Yissachar and Zevulun. It's a similar relationship that we have within our, kind of more built into the system almost, of Levi, the tribe of Levi and the Kohanim and the priests, who they don't inherit land in Israel. They receive Meiser, they receive tithes, they receive different gifts or donations, obligatory donations from the rest of the Jewish people, and that's to support them. And again, the tribe of Levi are the Kohanim, they're the priests, they're the teachers. They are fully engaged in spiritual pursuits, and in order to do that, though, they need to be supported by the rest of the people. So that was the relationship that was intended, says the Chassam Sofer, for Yaakov and Esav. That Yaakov would study Torah as he did, and Esav would support him. And in general, we always find that the one who's supporting is put first. So, for example, the verse when Yaakov is blessing his children, Yissachar and Zevulun, it says, Semach Zevulun b'tzeisacha v'Yissachar be'ohalecha. Zevulun will rejoice, you shall rejoice in your b'tzeisacha, and going out for business, and Yissachar in your tents. But Zevulun is mentioned first over there. And in a certain way, he says, both are masters of each other. And both have to kind of submit themselves to the other one. Yissachar, he quotes again from a verse, again, these are from the blessings in Parshas Vayechi that Yaakov gives to his children, to Yissachar and Zevulun. It says that Vayet Shichmo Lispol Vahi Lamas Oved, that the tribe of Zevulun has to accept the rulings of Yissachar, the teachings of Yissachar, and sorry, actually, I think I'm misquoting that. Let's just leave that for now, but in general, though, they're both submitting to each other. The tribe of Yissachar has to, the ones who are learning Torah, they're reliant on their supporters, and in a way they have to submit themselves to them. On the other hand, the tribe of Zevulun has to pay respect, and submit themselves to the teachings of Yissachar, of those who are highly elevated spiritually. So there's this, they're both kind of submitting themselves to each other. They both have an advantage over each other, and that's the relationship. But he says, fascinating thing, he says that why does Yissachar, those who study Torah, why do they have to submit themselves to Zevulun, their supporters? Because they need support, they need food, they need money, they need financial support. Why does Zevulun submit themselves to Yissachar? Because Yissachar they're the highly elevated spiritual people. So which is better in that who's more lofty in terms of their bowing and submitting themselves to the other one? In a certain way, he says, that which Zevulun, the providers, submit themselves, they're doing it out of l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven. They're showing respect to the other, and they're giving kavod, they're giving honor to the other for their elevated spiritual state. While Yissachar, those who are studying the Torah, they're submitting themselves to their providers because they need money, they need to be supported. So in a certain way, the Zevuluns, those who are providing, are when in their relationship towards the other half, are doing something that's greater, that's more elevated, and that's more l'shem shamayim, that's more for the sake of having. And he says that's why generally we put the supporter first. So Zevulun goes first, and that's why Yaakov was going to let Esav get out first. Yaakov would let Esav go ahead. Esav was going to be the supporter, and he lets Esav out of the womb first, and Yaakov would follow. However, the verse says, Ms. Rosenbaum, I'll get to you in a moment. The verse says that Shnei le'umim, this is verse 23, mimeyayich yiparedu, the two kingdoms will separate from your ears. Now already when as soon as they came out at birth, it was like that plan was over. That was supposed to be the plan, but from the moment of birth, already they were headed in different directions. And actually, just one more step back, as long as they were in the womb, this was kind of the vision, and that's why the Midrash mentions Antoninus and Rabbi Yehuda Anasi. Antoninus and Rabbi Yehuda Anasi had that kind of relationship. I don't know if the Romans were supporting them completely, but they had this mutual friendship at that time between the Roman governor and Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, in such a way that they each respected each other, and Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, had to respect the Romans for what they provided to him, but the Roman governor Antonius respected Rabbi Yehuda Anasi for who he was, for being this great spiritual leader. And so at that time you had this, and that's what the Midrash is saying, that there's two nations in your womb, and this is the ideal of what they could become, what they should become. However, that never comes to be. As soon as they're born, they go in different directions, and that's why, as soon as they're born, the Yaakov, at first he's letting Esav go first, but then he grabs on. As soon as Esav goes out, that's when he begins to grab on, as he realizes, so to speak. Again, they're not like these are babies being born, but it's what the actions represent is that it's not going to work out that way. What it represents is that as soon as Esav's born, he's really going already in a different direction, and that relationship is never going to manifest itself. However, that potential relationship still can explain some of what happens as they begin to grow up, because this ideal of Yaakov going to learn Torah, Esav being the one to support them, it could be that in Yitzchak's mind, this is what he wants to see from his offspring. This is the ideal that he wants to see. And so therefore, when Esav brings Yitzchak food, so it says that there was tzayid b'fiv, there was trickery in his mouth, right? So how was he tricking his father? So it could be that the very idea that he was bringing hunted game to his father was itself the trickery, because he's saying, look, this is my destiny. My destiny is that I'm supposed to support Yaakov and you, Yitzchak. So here I am. I'm doing it. I'm providing for you, and I'm doing my destined duty. But that was just a cover up. He wasn't really ready to live up to that arrangement or that relationship. But in bringing game to his father, it was both trickery. It was tzayid b'fiv. It was game in his father's mouth, and it was trickery in Esav's mouth, making it seem as though he was providing. And just one more thought on this before we go to the questions. So that also the Ksav Sofer, the son of the Chassam Sofer, says that when Esav would ask the questions, how do you tithe salt? How do you tithe straw? As Rashi mentions. So this was what's a tithe for? Why are we tithe? Who's he giving it to, right? So usually when you tithe, it goes, like we said, to the Levi, to the Levim, to those who have dedicated themselves or have been dedicated to completely to spiritual pursuits. So tithing in this case would have been to give to either Yaakov or Yitzchak, to one of these. Esav would tithe to give it to, or the people really actually there was a yeshiva in that time, yeshiva of Shem Va'aver, to provide to those who are engaged in Torah study. And so Esav would come to his father and say, of course I'm giving them a tithe. Of course I'm providing for them. That's my duty. But I don't even tithe. I don't only tithe what's required. I even want to tithe salt. I even want to give them salt. The way the Ksav Sofer says it is even the things that they don't need to live. Salt is like, you need bread to live. You don't need salt. Salt is extra flavor. But I'm even giving them that. I'm even giving them more than what they need. For sure providing for them bread to live on, but I'm even giving them more than that. And that was part of his deception, was to make it seem as if he was fulfilling this role as the provider, as the Zevulun, as in this relationship with Yaakov and with the other sages of the time, but in fact it was just a cover up. It wasn't really the case. Okay, pause for a second. We'll start with Mrs. Rosenbaum. If you can unmute. Yeah,
okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so anyways, it's been a while since I had the questions, but I have to try to remember.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. But so anyways, first of all, so there's a discrepancy between the Qassam Sofer and the and Rashi, right? Because Rashi thinks it's Antonios and Rabbi Yehuda, and Qassam Sofer thinks it's Yissachar and Zevulun, right?
Well, what
Yeah,
the
then I
Chassam
have
Sofer-
another question.
Okay.
So that's not resolved, right?
Okay. Well,
Okay.
no, that
Yeah,
is
then-
resolved. That is resolved. The Chassam Sofer is saying that in the womb, Yaakov and Esav were supposed to become like Yissachar and Zevulun, one
Right.
providing for the other.
Right.
And the example of that did manifest itself later in history with Rabbi Yehuda Anasi and Antoninus. So when
Okay.
Rashi quotes that midrash, what it means is this is what it's supposed to be like. Two
Yeah.
nations in your womb, two people in your womb, like it actually becomes, at one point in history, but it never did with the Yaakov and Esav, and it didn't really play out the way it was supposed to.
Okay, so I have two more points. First of all, if it's that much conflict in the womb, wouldn't they get the point that it's not going to be compatible? You know, if you have that much conflict, isn't that a clue that this is not going to be a compatible relationship? That's one thing. And the second thing is when you said that regarding Esav and how he's showing his father how he's providing for him, like he's supposed to, because of Yissachar and Zevulun in the other example. How does Esav even know that? How does he know that that's his supposed role?
Right. Yeah, it's a good question. And right, we would, according to this approach,
there may not be an answer.
Right, according to this approach, we would have to assume that he was, that it was discussed. That
yeah, okay,
right. You use your strengths for this, and your traits and your strengths, they lend themselves well to that kind of role. That's what.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Chaya Miriam.
Thank you, Rabbi. I'm just a little not confused, but I need some clarity. In last week Parsha, we learned that Abraham gave all his wealth to his sons, Isaac. So where does Esav thinks that he's the provider of the family? What happened to the wealth of this father?
Right. So that's the question the commentaries deal with actually very directly when when later in the Parsha, when Yitzchak goes to, and he asks Esav to hunt for him, like, why didn't he need him to hunt for him? Why, he's rich, he's wealthy, he doesn't need Esav to go and find him something. So that's a debate back and forth. Ibn Ezra says he became poor. Others say, no, he didn't become poor. Like he was asking him to hunt for other reasons we might discuss soon. But so yeah, what happened? Does he need it? Maybe not. But there will be times that people need it, and that's still the role that he could play. Again, I don't know how that wealth works exactly. You need to still. I don't know how the economy worked. It could be still had to hunt for his food. So But yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure.
Thank you, Robert.
Sure. Okay, let's go to Linda.
Thank you. So we always hear about how Esav's cover for his father, his honor and respect for his father was very sincere. And isn't there like some sort of saying that we should all follow Esav in how he honored his father, because it was just so, it was a major part, like that was like the positive part about him. So you're giving such a negative view of Esav, but isn't there some positive aspects to his relationship with his father?
So Esav is certainly regarded as an example of somebody who honored his father very well. Now, what his motivation is not necessarily good. Rav Dessler has a whole piece about this, about how he was really a different motivation than we're saying now, but he was motivated because either he wanted his kids to do the same to him, not because he respected his father. He just wanted to create that, if I take care of my father, then my kids will take care of me, which is a logical thing, but it doesn't mean he respected his father. He just wanted wanted to make sure that he was taken care of. So as somebody who he would get, the sages say he would get dressed up to provide for his father. So the way that he did it, I think, is an example. The motivation, not necessarily. So here we know Rashi's saying he tricked his father. How he tricked him, why he tricked him, that's what we're trying to flesh out. Menachem.
Thank you. Going back to Zevulun and Yissachar, first of all, I would say that that's almost the definition of a symbiotic relationship, as I understand a symbiotic relationship. But my question is, why was Zevulun honored? Because he recognized Yissachar's higher spiritual level, so now he's given credit for that. But Yissachar already started out at that higher level, so maybe Zevulun reaches it, but Yissachar is already there.
Right.
So
yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure. The Chassam Sofer is trying to, we observe that Zevulun is put first. And so I don't think we're saying that Zevulun is greater. I think we're saying that in one respect, there was something that he did that was greater. And as a result, he gets to be put first. But I don't think we're necessarily saying he was himself more lofty, or his people, whatever, that tribe, but there was something that earned them the right to be put first. And that's also over here that with Yaakov and Esav, that's what he's saying. Okay, I just want to move on a little bit. So I want to now, we're going to, I think, jump to the end of the Parsha. So the Malbim has a similar reading of different, not this part of the Parsha that we just did, but in terms of the Bechor, the firstborn rights, and then the end of the Parsha, where at the end, Yitzchak wants to bless Esav, and Yaakov dresses up as Esav and takes the blessing. So the Malbim, first of all, when it comes to the sale of the firstborn rights, so again, at the beginning of the Parsha, just really following their birth, it was after a passage of a number of years, but in the Torah, it's right after, and Yaakov convinces Esav to sell him the firstborn rights. The Malbim explains that firstborn right, the Bechor, the firstborn, is the person who takes this role. So according to the Malbim, it wasn't like designated from the womb. It could have gone either way. Who's going to be the spiritual one? Who's going to be really the carrier of the destiny of Avraham? as the spiritual light in the world. It could have been either of them. And when Yaakov saw that Esav was not really fit for the job, that's when he said, I want to buy the Bechor, I want to buy the firstborn rights, that I want to buy that role. And and he did, and he convinced Esav to sell it to him. And I'll just point out one thing, because some people sometimes that say, well, Esav was starving and he sold it under duress, and maybe he didn't really mean to sell it. He wouldn't have sold it. So the Malbim says that that's why it says really at the end of that episode, it's chapter 25, verse 34. It says, Vayivez Esav es habechora, that Esav despised the birthright. He disdained it. And what that means, it's at the very end, even after he had eaten, even after he got his food, even after he was no longer under duress, he still despised it, which means he was happy with the sale, and he had no interest in that firstborn right. Why did he have no interest? So actually he says it himself. He says, a few verses back, he says in verse 32, I'm going to die. Why do I need this birthright? And what he meant is, I'm going to die, and there's not going to be an afterlife. There's no world to come. That's what Esav thought. And so why would I want this spiritual role? What good would that do for me? If you don't believe in a world to come, in an Olam Haba, then there's no reason to be the spiritual force in the world. So Esav despised it, he disdained it, and he sold the firstborn rights. Now, if we jump ahead to the end of the Parsha, or towards the end, chapter 27, and so it's on the source sheet, page 2. It says, it came to pass when Isaac was old, his eyes were too dim to see. He called Esav his elder son, and he said to him, my son, and this is where he calls him in to bless him. Now, why is he going to bless Esav? So it comes back to the same point. Yaakov is now the Bechor. It could be, according to the Malbim, Yitzchak even knew that. Yitzchak knew that Yaakov was the one who would be the carrier of the spiritual destiny of Abraham, and kind of the spiritual light to the world. And Esav, Yitzchak thought, should be the one who supports him. And really he wanted to give Esav a job. Esav, right before this, the Torah says that Esav took wives from the daughters of Canaan. That it was very bad in the eyes of his parents, the Torah says. And so Yitzchak wants to get Esav back on track, and he wants to give him the role of provider. And that's why he plans to bless Esav with the blessing of that he ends up giving Yaakov. If you want to just jump down to verse 28, he says, this is the blessing that he planned to give to Esav, but ended up giving to Yaakov. May the Lord give you of the dew of the heavens, and of the fatness of the earth, and an abundance of grain and wine. God should give you wealth, and nations shall serve you, and kingdoms shall bow down to you. You shall be a master over your brothers, meaning the cousins. Your mother's son shall bow down to you. That may refer to Yaakov, but basically he wants to give Esav wealth and power and strength. Why? Because Esav will be the one to provide for Yaakov and protect him. That was Yitzchak's intent with giving Esav the bracha. Now Rivka knew that was not a good idea. She knew Esav a bit better, and she knew that if Esav was giving power and wealth, he would just keep it all for himself. He would not provide for Yaakov, and that's why Rivka tells Yaakov to go and take the blessings for himself, which means that the provision, the wealth and the support of rather than having like two separate, you have the descendants of Yaakov as the tribe of Levi, and you have the descendants of Esav as the supporters. It will all be within the descendants of Yaakov, within the children of Israel would have both parts to the system, which is what we have, which is what ends up coming with the Bnei Levi. The Levi were the descendants of Levi, were the spiritual force in the world, and everybody else, supports them. Of course, everybody still has a role to play in that, but that's the general setup. But it was within the tribe within the descendants of Yaakov, and that was the blessing that that Yitzchak ends up giving Yaakov. Okay, so try to just decide which are the most important points to bring out. Okay, maybe we'll just, in a couple of minutes, we'll go through some of it. So if you look at verse 3, so Yitzchak commands Esav. Again, I don't give you the context. I just tried to keep just a few verses as few verses as I can on the source sheet. But in verse 3 of chapter 27, so Yitzchak tells Esav to go sharpen your implements, your sword, take your bow, and go forth to the field and hunt game for me. So he says to bring back some game, bring me back some food. The Malbim says the point of this was that Yitzchak wanted to give Esav this blessing. In order for a blessing to be effective, so you need, he says, 3 things. One is that the blesser has to be on the level to give the blessing. One of them is that the recipient has to be on a level to receive the blessing, and then there has to be a certain relationship between the two of them. But this point is that he wanted Esav to go do the mitzvah of honoring his father. By doing the mitzvah of honoring his father, so first of all, that mitzvah is a mitzvah that relates to this world, that relates to the materials of this world, the provisions of this world. The parents are the ones, right? There's 3 partners in creation: mother, father, and God. God gives the neshama, and parents provide the kind of physical and the nourishment, bringing up the child, and honoring the parents. The Malbim says is the Torah promises reward. It says you'll have longevity, and again, the simple reading is longevity in this world for honoring the parents, and in order to be able to receive a blessing of this world, which is what this blessing is. This blessing is a blessing of wealth and strength. So he's told to do this mitzvah, which relates to what your parents have provided you in this world. Again, there's other ways to look at kibbur avayim, but that's for right now how he's looking at it. So that's why he sends him out specifically, do the mitzvah of kibbur avayim, or kibbur av in this case, honor your father, then you'll be ready to receive blessing. When Rivka tells Yaakov to take Esav's place, so she says, she commands him. He won't be honoring his father, but he'll be honoring his mother instead. And so she commands him, that way he can still be fitting to receive the blessing from Yitzchak. And that's why in verse 8 she says, hearken to my voice, what I'm commanding you, and go and bring food to your father. But that's honoring her, so that he's still fit to be able to receive the blessing of this world. Okay, I'm going to unofficially end the class now, because people may have to go, but I want to keep going because there's still more. So unofficially, we'll hold here, and then but I'm going to keep going for whoever wants to stick around. Okay, so then it says that Rivka took the garments of Esav, and she dressed Yaakov in those garments. Now the Malbim says that that there's an idea that when you have a prophecy, so once, certain prophecies could be reversed, but once it's begun to be implemented in this world, then it doesn't get reversed. And so what her intent here was that the blessing that would come from Yitzchak, which was somewhat of a prophecy, divinely inspired, it should begin to take effect right now, and that way the blessing will land and it will stick. So what was her plan? She said, take the clothes of Esav. Now, clothes, he says, represent those things, the goodness of this world, the material good of this world, the material wealth of this world. That's sometimes called begadim, one's clothes, because it's something that's outside of us. It's not a part of us. It's something that's outside of us. That's our clothes. All the materials of this world are something that's the blessings of this world. The physical blessings are outside of us. They are like our clothes. The spiritual blessings of this world, those that become a part of us. So that's the person themselves. So because so the physical, the clothes are big to Esav. They're the clothes of Esav. The material parts of this world are called the clothes of Esav. And what she wanted was that he should take those clothes of Esav and put them on him already. Make them a part of you. The clothes which represent the materials of this world, put them on you already, and that will already begin that Yaakov will already now have the blessing of the materials of this world, being manifest in him already from the start, and that will kind of get the blessing going. And when Yaakov comes into Yitzchak, so the famous line again after some back and forth, so Yitzchak says, after he feels him, he says, Hakol kol Yaakov, the voice is the voice of Yaakov, the hayadayim yedei Esav, but the hands are the hands of Esav. And that the kol, the voice is the voice of Yaakov, meaning that which is inside of you, that which is the kol, the voice coming from inside, is the person themselves, the spiritual part of them. That's Yaakov, but the hands are the hands of Esav. That's going to be the material wealth of the world, and the Midrash tells us about this. I put this on the source sheet. The Midrash says, the last page, that our forefather promised us, Hakol kol Yaakov, that at a time when the voice of Jacob is found in the synagogues, then the hands are not the hands of Esav, but if not, the hands are the hands of Esav. Bizman shekol shel Yaakov. When we have kol Yaakov, then we also have Yadayim yedei Esav. The way the Malbim explains it, when we have the voice of Yaakov, then we also have the hands of Esav. So Yaakov comes in, and Yitzchak observes him, and he says, the voice is the voice of Yaakov, and the hands are the hands of Esav. So the question is, who's going to have the hands of Esav? If we have the voice of Yaakov, if we have Torah, then we will also be the ones to possess the hands of Esav. Again, the hands of Esav represent the material wealth of this world and strength in this world. As long as we have the voice of Yaakov, then we also have the hands of Esav. But if we don't have that, then we don't have the hands of Esav. Esav has the hands of Esav, and that's not good. So the blessing and the goal really, and what comes out is that what we achieve through this episode is that in the original, what could have been was that we have the Jewish people, the descendants of Yaakov, as the spiritual light of the world, being supported by Esav as a separate but connected entity. That Rivka understood was not going to actually happen. We wouldn't have gotten the support and the strength that we need from them, and we never would have been able to survive that way. Instead, Rivka and Yaakov engineer it, that Yitzchak gives this blessing to Yaakov himself. And within Yaakov, within our own nation, within the nation of Israel, we have both aspects. And and it's from this blessing really that this blessing continues to provide, for our survival till this very day. We continue to be able to support ourselves financially. Thank God the Jewish people have been successful in that regard throughout history and again in our time, from this blessing, from the blessing that Yitzchak gives to Yaakov. And again, also provides us with the blessing, also provides us with the strength to be able to protect ourselves. And again, that's something that especially in our time we need and we benefit from. And in a certain way, this blessing is a major, has such significant historical impact in how things played out, and how the formulation of our nation and how we function within ourselves with both aspects of Torah and also those who are machzikei Torah, those who support Torah, and those who defend our nation against our enemies. Okay, we'll hold there.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi. Shukran.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're most welcome.